The Memphis Grizzlies came down to Houston, Texas, take on former teammate Dillon Brooks and try to end the Rockets' home winning streak, but didn't happen. An ugly loss for the Memphis Grizzlies ahead of Thanksgiving, and we got to talk about all that coming up right here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Everyone, what's going on? My name is Damichael Cole, and welcome to Locked On Grizzlies. I'm the beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here, right there in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm in Houston, Texas right now. Wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to all who celebrate, to you and your family. I told you what I was thankful for a little bit on yesterday's episode of Locked On Grizzlies, but more from the Grizzlies perspective. But we're always thankful, in my case, I'm thankful for family. Thankful for this job, having this job covering the Memphis Grizzlies, a team that I grew up watching a lot and all of those things. But that's probably the extent of the good things that we have to talk about on today's episode. It was an ugly loss at the hands of Dillon Brooks and the Houston Rockets for the Memphis Grizzlies, 111-91 in Houston at the Toyota Center. The Grizzlies started off good. Desmond Banes was cooking, and from that point on, things went downhill, especially late in the third quarter into the fourth quarter. I think the Rockets went on a 23-7 run, opened the game up in the fourth quarter, and that was all she wrote. The Rockets in the second, after the first quarter, the Grizzlies won the first quarter 28-21. Houston went on to win the second quarter 24-18, the third quarter 29-22, and then it was the fourth quarter 37-23. The Grizzlies have struggled a lot in fourth quarter so far, but a lot of takeaways for me in this game, and quite frankly, I don't know how else to put it, but some of them are concerning. Some of them are definitely concerning. Again, most notably, the Grizzlies just didn't have enough offense, didn't have enough firepower in this game. Desmond Banes finished with 23 points, efficient at 6 of 12 shooting from the field, 9 of 10 from the free throw line. Jaren Jackson Jr. got to the free throw line 12 times, made 9 of his attempts. He also added 23 points. But Jaren shot 7 of 21 from the field, which is starting to be a little bit concerning. He entered this game shooting 43% from the field, and if he was a guard, it's probably okay. But Jaren is 6'11", 240, 250 pounds. And you expect him to just be much more efficient from a shooting perspective. But that's part of the problem. Another part of the problem is the fact that every time Jaren turns left, every time he turns right, and especially in this game against the Rockets, he is seeing a lot of double teams. And yes, it's up to him to be able to pass out of those and make, the right decisions. In this game, Jaren Jackson Jr. had 0 assists, for example. We talked about how he's improved as a playmaker to a certain degree, but he's still not above league average, in that area. So, again, he's improved, but has he improved enough to kind of be taken as a serious threat as a playmaker? I don't think so yet. That's the next step for Jaren Jackson Jr. 7 of 21 from the field, 23 points, 0 assists. But outside of Dez and Jaren's 23 points, Zaire Williams finished with 13 points. But it wasn't into garbage time. I think Zaire had like 5 points when the Grizzlies were out of hand, and he scored 8 points down the stretch the last 3-4 minutes of the fourth quarter to finish with 13 points. So pretty much over the course of the game, Desmond Banes and Jaren Jackson Jr. were the only Grizzlies to really score in double figures. And that's the problem right now. And just to take you guys down this whole, where I've been in terms of this conversation with where the Grizzlies are right now. Most of if you go back to the very first game of the season, I was telling everyone, I was like, calm down. And the reason I was saying calm down is because, you had, after 5 games, you knew you're going to get an impactful player to add to the team, which turned out to be Bismack Biyombo. I said that, Santi Aldama would eventually be healthy. Luke Kennard, again, got hurt in the first game, second game, whatever the case it was. But Luke Kennard was another piece that you knew was going to shoot the ball better. He was struggling to shoot at that point. And actually, it went in a different direction. more injuries started to happen. Xavier Tillman, um, and the guard rotation. Derrick Rose, who's back, but he's still kind of being limited as the Grizzlies are very careful with his knee right now, which is why Jacob Gilliard is starting, getting more minutes at the point guard spot. Santi Aldama, we saw in that last game against the Celtics, kind of gave the Grizzlies a spark when he was added to the starting lineup. But in this game, mostly dealt with foul trouble, 5 personal fouls, 22 minutes, only finished with 8 points in his case. And then there is just the bench. Right now, David Roddy, Derrick Rose, John Conchar, Zaire Williams were the guys who got most of the minutes in this last game. We talked about Zaire Williams, 13 points. But as most of you like to point out, I know Joe Molinex pointed this out as well, my co-host. Zaire Williams was minus 27 in this game when he was on the floor. You can say, hey, it's about who he's on the floor with. I agree to a certain degree, but at the same time, this is constantly happening. And I know most people, well, some people have advocated for Vince Williams Jr. If you watch that Celtics game, his defense was spectacular. If you just followed, him up to this point in his career, Vince Williams has shown the potential to be a solid NBA defender, whether it's down there with the hustle. He has a very smooth-looking three-point shot with his left hand. I asked Taylor Jenkins after the game. I said, what more do you need to see from Vince Williams in order for him to get playing time in this rotation? And as you just heard me mention, the Grizzlies stuck with 4 guys off the bench. Taylor Jenkins has talked a lot lately about just trying to find continuity with this team amid all these moving pieces, which gets back to what he said about Vince Williams. And I know that a lot of people on social media weren't happy about this when I posted it. And he basically said that right now he's trying to stick to a 9-man rotation, and he went with his gut. By going with his gut, those were the 9 guys who we felt were at top of the rotation. So Zaire Williams, David Roddy, John Conchar were the wings who got minutes above Vince Williams in his game. Taylor Jenkins said he decided to go with his gut. He mainly went with a 9-man rotation in part because he wants to find, wants guys to find rhythms. For example, he said, well, if he were to go to 10-man, it's just harder to get guys in rhythm, which is usually true because you've seen Taylor Jenkins play 10 guys, and usually in the second half he goes down to 9 or whatever the case may be when he usually plays 10, unless all 10 guys, are playing really well. But I agree with the 9-man rotation. But I do not agree with the idea that Vince Williams was not in that 9-man rotation. He played well in that last game. And right now, the Grizzlies should be just trying to figure something out. Somebody's got to get going for this team because it's ugly right now. Desmond Banes is your constant. You know what you're going to get from him. And he had some really good success against Dillon Brooks early in that game. We're going to talk more about Dez and Dillon, for that matter later on in this episode. But Jaren Jackson Jr., I think, you're going to get some good, you're going to get some bad, but you're going to get production from Jaren Jackson. You're going to get 23 points. You're going to get free throw shooting. You're going to get production from him. Outside of those 2 guys, right now you're just praying. Santi Aldama, I think, the foul trouble kind of held him back in this game because he shot 2 of 5, 1 of 3 on 3-pointers. Santi isn't a guy I expect to be in foul trouble a lot. So I think that's another solid double-digit scorer for you. But outside of those 3 guys, we've seen in the starting lineup, Bismack Biyombo is not going to be much of a scoring threat. Jacob Gilliard, he shot the ball from 3-point range well, but just a consistent scoring threat that has not been his thing. Same thing with David Roddy. He's never, he likes to get downhill, but, he's in these Grizzlies offense where Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Banes kind of are your main operators on the ball. He's asked to space the floor, kind of shoot the basketball, and he hasn't really shot it from 3-point range well. Zaire Williams, same thing. John Conchar actually set a Grizzlies franchise record in this game. John Conchar finished with no points and 11 rebounds. It's first time it's the most rebounds without a point in franchise history for a player. So I guess congratulations for John Conchar for setting that franchise record for the Memphis Grizzlies. But here's the thing. This team doesn't have much depth from a production standpoint right now, and it's because you're missing Marcus Smart, Luke Kennard, Brandon Clark is a double-digit scorer, off the bench for this team. Of course, Ja Morant, That goes without being said. But so many guys out right now who impact this team from a scoring perspective. And it's just, at this point, it's too much. It's too much. And the Rockets, give credit to them, they are a terrific defense. I think Jalen Green played well for them, 34 points for him. Terrific defense that the Grizzlies went against. Of course, Dillon Brooks, we know what he brings to the table defensively. I think he finished 4-14 shooting in this game, 0-5 on three-pointers. So kind of a little Dillon Brooks Memphis almost type game in this game, not the one that's been playing extremely well for the Houston Rockets. But overall, the Grizzlies got a lot to work on. They're 3-11 right now. Things aren't going to get easier going forward. You got the Suns who are on the 5-game win streak coming up next. Then you got the Timberwolves who are at the top of the Western Conference right now. And, I mean, it's tough sledding. They need production. We'll see where it comes from. But one guy who they probably could have got production from if he was re-signed is Dillon Brooks. We'll talk about Dillon Brooks next year on Locked On Grizzlies and the experience that I captured at this game in Houston coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer of the Commercial Appeal, right here in I keep saying right here in Memphis, Tennessee, but I'm right here in Houston right now, in Houston, Texas. Once again, if you're just tuning in, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying, this time with whoever they cherish this time with. And if you're not, I hope you go get you a nice meal somewhere. And if you don't like that type of food, some people just don't, like the typical Thanksgiving food menu, then go to, Popeyes, McDonald's, Wendy's, wherever you like to go eat and go get you something to eat, or you just make you a nice home-cooked meal of your own, whatever the case may be. But anyways, it was home cooking for the Rockets in this game, and in particular, Dillon Brooks. So what I gathered from this game is it wasn't really, and go check out my story on commercialappeal.com to kind of really get the backstory behind this, but it wasn't really about the trash talk in this game. It was more of a reunion. Every Grizzlies player that I talked to had so many good things to say about Dillon Brooks, what he meant to them. Zaire Williams in particular, who ended up doing a jersey exchange, with Dillon Brooks, basically just said, look, that guy taught me so much, about how to be a pro at this NBA level. I personally, I'm so used to Dillon Brooks being in Memphis and taking on that villain character. This is the first time I've seen him just smile so much. Like DB was just constant smiles as he's going over and hugging assistant coaches and trainers and talking to Jaren Jackson Jr. and they're cracking jokes with each other. And you get to understand why these guys have been teammates for so long and the relationships that they established over that time. But the Dillon Brooks experience in this game, as I mentioned earlier, 4-14 shooting, 0-5 on three-pointers. He finished -2 in his 26 minutes of play and dealt with a little bit of foul trouble. They had 3 fouls in the first half, but Ime Udoka, a Rockets coach, kept playing him. But I think Desmond Banes got the better of him early in this game. But that's my takeaway from the Dillon Brooks perspective in this game. I think Dillon Brooks overall, I asked some of the people who cover the Rockets. I said, did he look like he was playing with anything extra based on what you've seen? And they were like, yeah, you could tell early on he's trying to force a couple shots a little bit, try to get going. Looked like in that fourth quarter when he missed this last three-pointer, he let out a, kind of a big sigh because he wanted to, do a little celebration when he shot that three-pointer. But nonetheless, before the game, after the game, DB was all smiles. You could tell, he misses the guys in Memphis. They miss him as well. And the trash talk leading into this game dominated the headlines. Dillon Brooks saying the Grizzlies don't have swagger, comparing himself to an old ex-girlfriend that the Grizzlies kind of let get away and all that type of stuff. But behind all that, because it felt like that was more just smoke and mirrors. But behind all of that, it felt like a reunion. Dillon, the coaches, the players, it was all fun. Before the game, after the game, again, he did a jersey exchange with Zaire Williams, every player, David Roddy, Jaren, Desmond Banes said it was fun to compete against him again. I asked Desmond Banes what he said to him. He didn't want to get into it when he made the shot early on, and he said a couple words to Dillon, and that was just a little competitive banter between the two. It looked like he was telling him that you can't guard me. But good old competitive banner is what I took from it. Des said, "Oh, I'm not gonna." He was talking to when I asked him about it at the game. He said, "I'm not gonna give y'all what y'all want," and that's kind of the new Grizzlies, right? If you've been following the Grizzlies this season, you've been following my coverage or anyone else who's been closely around the team, you've been following our coverage. It's not a lot of trash talk, with this year's team. That's more of last year's style, and a big part of that identity was Dillon Brooks, but that's really, not this team's style anymore. Desmond Banes will chit-chat every now and then, but Jaren really doesn't say much, and most of the other guys who are active don't have, I guess, the credentials yet to really be those type of players. So that's just not what this team is. But it was a good reunion. Dillon Brooks and the Grizzlies, they'll play again in Houston in December before another meeting. I think a couple days later after that next Houston meeting in mid-December, Dillon Brooks will come to Memphis again. I expect there'll be a tribute video and all of those good things. So it should be a fun experience when he finally comes back to Memphis, because that's kind of what's left to see now. I know people have been asking, will the fans boo him and all that? Here's my take. I think you guys should give Dillon Brooks his flowers, clap for him, because at the end of the day, I always say this. When we talk about Dillon Brooks, you can get mad about the shot selection. You can say, thought he was better than he actually was, and all the trash talk was unnecessary. You can say all of those things. But what you cannot say, there's no Grizzlies fan who's ever watched the Grizzlies can say this. You cannot say that Dillon Brooks didn't play hard. I don't remember a game where I felt like, man, Dillon Brooks, kind of packed it in this game. Because even when he shot 2 of 14, 5 of 17, 9 of 23, or whatever the case may be, he went on that defensive end and he was giving it his all. And I think that alone, especially with him last season capping it off, making an all-defensive team, on top of, being a big part of multiple 50-win seasons. When Dillon Brooks got there, for the OG Grizzlies fans that were here before the Ja Morant days, when Dillon Brooks was drafted in the second round that year, it wasn't a good team. Grizzlies were bad. They didn't really have a direction. They were stuck kind of with older guys who you knew weren't a part of the future. Mike Conley, Mark Gasol, Zach Randolph had already left at that point. Tony Allen had already, left. So it was like they was just in a downward stage. And a guy like Dillon Brooks came along, second round out of nowhere, provided a spark. You get Jaren the next year, you get Ja the next year, and those guys kind of revamped the culture. And Dillon Brooks was a big part of that. So all the trash talk and, the swagger stuff and all that stuff aside, he definitely, when he comes back to Memphis, I think he deserves his flowers. And we'll talk more about it because I want Joe Mo next to chime in on that as well. But speaking of chiming in on things, I mentioned that I was in Houston and I kind of observed something. And another Grizzlies player could potentially be added to the injury report soon. We're going to talk about that next, coming up on Locked On Grizzlies. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies, everyone. I am Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal here in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to thank you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies each and every day. And remember, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On. Plus, our national shows are covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you continue to tune in to Locked On Sports Today as well. Injuries, man. You think at this point that the Grizzlies have had enough, right? And then Desmond Banes, not to kind of delay the point here. Desmond Banes in the third quarter, I think he kind of fell on Alperen Sengun and twisted his left ankle, and he got up real gingerly. And then he eventually came out of the game. And when Desmond Banes came out of the game, the Grizzlies trainers tried to walk over there to him, and he waved them off. I saw it. He waved them off. He told them, he didn't need assistance. He was good or whatever. Came back in the game, played through it. And we get in the locker room after the game. I'm looking at Des, and Has black tape, around his ankle. He's limping, very noticeably. And you really start to wonder. I'll say this. Desmond Bain is the most valuable player on the Grizzlies right now. He is the guy you absolutely, positively cannot lose. And he's played in every single game, especially with this stretch of games coming up. I just mentioned it. You got the Suns. You got the Timberwolves, your next two games. Suns are probably the hottest team in the NBA right now. The Timberwolves have the best record, in the Western Conference. You don't want to go into either one of those games without Desmond Bain. We'll see what the injury report looks like and all of those things. But right now, Desmond Bain left. I talked to him after the game, and I'll say this before I say what he said, because you got to understand this part of it. Desmond Bain is a gamer. He's one of those guys. When it comes to injuries and stuff like that, he'll tell you, "Oh, I'm fine." And you look up, he's not really fine. Again, he waved the Grizzlies training staff off. And again, they tried to come check on him, and he's like, "No, I don't need to be checked on. I'm good." And then after the game, he's limping. So I asked him, I said, how's the ankle doing? And he said, "I'm all right." Desmond Banes saying, "I'm all right." And this is just my opinion. This isn't no medical analysis whatsoever. So don't take it as that. This is just my opinion. We'll get more of an update from the Grizzlies in the next coming days. But just to offer my insight, covering the team, covering Desmond Bain, what I've gotten to learn about him, here's what I think. Desmond Bain saying, "I'm all right," did not trigger a positive, response from me. I didn't think that was a positive, him saying that, because Desmond Bain in the past, when he had the toe injury, I remember, asking him about the toe injury, and you could tell, he was just saying, "I'm good," but there were other occasions that I won't say too much about where you knew that the toe injury wasn't 100%, but Desmond Bain would say on the record, "Hey, I'm good. I'm good." That's kind of what this felt like. You know what I'm saying? Because he paused for a second. Looked like, should I go into detail? Then he paused. He said, "I'm all right. I'm good." So he said he's going to be all right. But at the end of the day, another injury, and again, it's ankle. We'll see. The Grizzlies will have more of an update, but that's the guy who you absolutely cannot lose, along with Jaren Jackson Jr. Only 3 Grizzlies have played in every game so far this season. That's David Roddy, that's Desmond Bain, that's Jaren Jackson Jr. Desmond Bain and Jaren Jackson Jr. are the 2 most indispensable players right now who are active and able to play. I've talked about how the bench has very little production coming from it. I think Derrick Rose can give you a spark there, but again, limited minutes. He played 16 minutes in this game. I think he played 14 minutes against the Celtics. And right now, they're managing his knee. David Roddy, you like to get him downhill, but he hasn't really given you too much. Zaire Williams is capable. We've seen it in stretches, but it's inconsistent right now with him. One game, he plays really well. One half, he plays really well. One quarter, he looks really good. But then there's the other stretches of the game where it's like, man, Zaire really is struggling. So all things considered, that isn't really positive news. We'll have more, on Desmond Bain and what's to come from there as we find out more. But I'm not encouraged by what he said. But we'll see. He had a slight limp after the game. He was walking on it. So I know most people will say, well, ankle injuries, guys are putting pressure on it or walking on it. That's a very good sign. Well, there's a good sign he was walking on it. But again, I'm not going to really get into the whole medical thing too much. I'll just say that he told me that he's going to be all right. And we'll get an update from the Grizzlies relatively soon. Once again, hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving on today. And the Grizzlies will play the Minnesota Timberwolves coming up on Sunday. They play Phoenix Suns on Friday. So on Monday's episode of Locked on Grizzlies, make sure you tuned in for that. Me and Joe Monex should be together. It's probably going to be Joe. We'll see. I think we'll both be together for that one potentially, and we'll talk about those 2 games, recap what happened, And remember, the Grizzlies have not won a game at home this season. Both of those games will be at home, so a chance for the Grizzlies to finally get their first home win. But I want to thank you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Once again, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7. And they cover the top sports stories of the day with the local experts, like myself, like Joe Monax. So you might see Locked On Grizzlies on Locked On Sports Today. But make sure you go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe, because it's the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube. But once again, thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Remember, we're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.